Hello, Pulisic scored his best goal yet this weekend, but Milan stopped by a resurrected David De Gea. Could the ghost of Paul Pogba land in MLS? And do we need a new international football calendar? That and much more here on Monday's Morning Kickaround. Welcome. It is Monday morning. Welcome into Morning Kickaround, covering the world's game, the world's favorite game, and everyone's favorite country. How you doing? My name's Robert Kerr, up from the lower leagues of the game, sitting next to the man fresh off of a birthday celebration. How you doing, Mr. Jason Davis?
I'm doing good. I'm not a year older. That's not how time works. You don't become a year older. You count that. Anyway, I'm feeling great, Robert. I'm ready to go. It's Monday. What could be better than talking soccer on a Monday?
Talking soccer on a Monday. And if you'd like to join us, hit us up on the social medias at MKickaround on X and Instagram. And if you want to write us an email, hit us up, questions, comments, concerns, or partnering opportunities, morningkickaround at gmail.com.
Is that how you pronounce that? That's how we're going? Jamail? Okay.
All right. Certainly is. All right, Jason, it seems like you're ready to rock. Let's hit Monday's long balls. It is Monday, October 7th, 2024. Can you believe it? Jason's a year older, and we got headlines to get into. Probably sports are really good right now, especially for me in the upper Midwest. But the highlight of the football, the most beautiful goal of at least his Milan career, in my opinion.
Your opinion?
Christian Pulisic.
He scored some good
an absolute
goals.
Banger. Okay. For Milan at the weekend.
Okay. I think that's a bold statement, Robert. You're saying that that's the best goal he's scored for Milan. Okay, no, it's a really good goal. I mean, it is. And there's this weird thing that we do as Americans. I don't know if it's weird. I think maybe there are other countries that are in this same boat where, something like that happens. Christian Pulisic, the best player for the U.S. men's national team. And a guy who, let's be honest, is on a track to be the best player all time. I mean, you could argue he's the most talented already. Whether his resume stacks up to a Dempsey or a Donovan is a different question, and maybe we'll do that one day. We'll have that debate. We'll talk about it. When does Christian Pulisic tick over to passing Donovan and Dempsey for the best player in American soccer history? At least, how much of his national team exploits matter for that argument. But what I'll say is this is the thing that we do. Something like that happens. And, if you are still on X, like if you're still swimming in Elon's pool, which has not been...
that pool's been getting dirty. Like
they don't clean that pool.
Trying to promote the show and gather information. It's gotten dirty.
There are gators living in that pool. Let's just be honest. But if you are still swimming in Elon's pool, it's an explosion of rah USA. We are look at our boy score a world-class goal. And again, it's simultaneously a natural response that we're going to have when an American soccer player does something like that, because, well, let's be honest, we're not a country that has a long list of world-class players, right? I've never really had one, to be honest with you. So of course we're going to be excited, but it's so thirsty, right? It feels such a desperate thing to do, to be like, oh my God, he scored this amazing goal. And then of course there's the controversy around the penalty kicks, and you mentioned De Gea, but really, come on, this is okay. This is what I understand, and maybe the chat can help me if I'm wrong here. Maybe the people watching us live. And by the way, please subscribe to the show. Have we mentioned that? Please subscribe to the show and help us out. We're trying to get to 200 very shortly. But I've heard that Teo Hernandez is one goal away from tying Maldini for the most goals by a defender at Milan.
Okay.
That's what or maybe it was passing. It was either tying or passing Maldini. And also something about Teo Hernandez's birthday. These are just things I've seen. I have not double checked. I probably should have done my research. When is Teo Hernandez's birthday? Maybe Teo Hernandez and I share a birthday. Well, that would be cool. I don't know that's the case. Let me look that. Let me see if I can look that up. October 6th. Yesterday was his birthday. We don't share a birthday. I'm October 3rd. But Teo Hernandez's birthday was this weekend. So either he's trying to tie or pass Maldini, and it's his birthday, or it's just his birthday, and Pulisic gave Teo the opportunity to take that first penalty kick because of those facts. Which, okay, right? Like, we've seen Fonseca say that Pulisic is the dedicated penalty taker at Milan. That has been stated publicly. So if Teo Hernandez is taking a penalty and it's because it's his birthday or because of Maldini or whatever, if Pulisic is saying, here you go, Teo, take the penalty kick, sure, whatever. Obviously did not go the way that Milan wanted it to. And then the second one. The second one, Tammy Abraham takes. And there's some video bouncing around. It's very quick. It's hard to kind of understand what's happening here. But there's some video bouncing around that seems to indicate that Tammy Abraham took the penalty kick from Pulisic. Like, Pulisic was supposed to, and he did not. And obviously it did not go well for Milan again. And instead of the victory that they needed to keep pace in Serie A, to be there fighting for the top spot in the table. I mean, we don't think they're that good right now, but if they were good, and top four is absolutely a target, right? Because that's Champions League for sure. They end up with that. Now, I don't know.
Teo Hernandez definitely seemed like he had an extra level to him, good and bad in the game against Fiorentina. But Tammy Abraham, has anyone ever accused of him of making like really high-minded and intelligent decisions on the field?
No, that's part of the why he's sort of like backed his way into playing at Milan. Even though Milan is a massive club, you would say that if Tammy Abraham really was what he was supposed to be, he'd still be at Chelsea. He'd be their starting striker. Like we wouldn't be talking about Nicholas Jackson. We'd be talking about Tammy Abraham. I think that's a true statement. This is what Fonseca said. Our designated penalty taker is Pulisic. I don't know why the players changed their minds. I have spoke to them and told them that this can't happen again. And I believe the numbers are something like Pulisic has converted 10 of 10 in his professional club career. I don't know that. I can't remember him missing for the United States. I don't know how many he's taken overall. That's certainly a factor here. But Tammy Abraham has missed at least a couple. He's missed at least a couple. And if you have a guy who never missed and a guy who sometimes missed, you want to go with the guy who never misses. That would be my thought. That would be my thought, Robert. I'm not a genius, but that would be my thought.
So do you think that Pulisic, had he been able to step up to the mark, that he would have beaten David De Gea, who is just like absolutely unreal? One of the strangest stories I thought in kind of top level football was the fact that De Gea went so long without a club. He finally gets a club after a year and a half or so, and he jumps into this Fiorentina side and just made an absolute grocery list of unreal saves, including 2 penalty saves. And to be fair, like, I'm trying to remember, they weren't like the worst penalties in the world either.
Well, no, that's like, you have to give De Gea some credit. You can't take away from De Gea the penalties. I mean, okay, what I'm going to say is that De Gea is very good, but if you hit a penalty the way it should be hit, no goalkeeper in the world can save it. Yeah. The advantage lies with the taker, not with the goalkeeper. A good goalkeeper, a talented penalty-saving goalkeeper, is obviously worth his weight in gold. But you can definitely say that there are penalties no goalkeeper can save, and Christian Pulisic is known for taking those kind of penalties. And he didn't get a chance to do that, and they lost to Fiorentina. And now Fonseca is pissed, and there's discord at Milan right now. And again, some people were reading the moment where Abraham takes the ball from Pulisic and end up taking that second penalty kick as an indication of a fracture within the team.
Yeah, that brings up our final point here on Pulisic and Milan. Is Milan good enough to win anything this year?
They don't look like it, do they? They don't look like it. They have moments, but they're shaky. They certainly did not seem to be they're certainly not in the upper echelon in terms of the Champions League. And I'm not saying anything anybody doesn't already know. That's a club right now that doesn't have the talent, the horses, the ability to dictate games the way you need to be able to dictate them to win something like the Champions League.
They've scored a lot of goals, but they always seem to concede goals at the worst times.
Yeah, I mean, look, they went to Leverkusen and they didn't get embarrassed, but that game they did not ever look like they were going to win that game. And yes, it took a single goal from Boniface. It was just that beat them. But I don't think you look at that scoreline and go, I think Magnan was really good in that game. You don't look at that scoreline and go, oh, that means Milan is close to a team like Leverkusen. No, they're not. Leverkusen is miles better than Milan right now. And you look in the league, clearly there are 2 or 3 or 4 teams miles better. I'm not going to say Juventus is a perfect product right now, clearly not, but we know Inter Milan is going to be really good. And if Napoli continues to play this way under Conte, yeah, you're looking at scrapping for 4th if you're AC Milan. And Fonseca was this close to getting sacked. This close. If he didn't beat Inter, he would probably already be gone.
So Milan sit 5 points behind the leaders in 6th place after 7 games. Moving on to long ball number 2, somewhat Serie A adjacent. Paul Pogba back in the news. His really long ban for was it performance enhancing drugs or testing for something that he shouldn't have had in the system. He had multiple years to go on his ban. That was reduced. He can start coming back to professional training in the winter and can play club ball in March. Brings up the question, should an MLS team go after Mr. Paul Pogba?
That's a very good question. It's interesting because he is a reclamation project, right?
Oh, yeah.
There is a misfit toy element to Paul Pogba. I don't know which one he is. Like the Jack in the Box that scares himself. I don't remember how that movie or how that Christmas special played out.
The inconsistent Jack in the Box.
The inconsistent Paul Pogba. The I don't know. Obviously
the toy that sometimes works.
The performance enhancing element of this makes it an interesting analogy to kind of imagine. Look, at his best, Paul Pogba is a world-class footballer. That's not a controversial statement, right? Like at his best, when he's engaged, when he cares, when he's not taking horse steroids or whatever it was. That's not what he was taking. Sorry. I'm sorry. Am I going to get in trouble? Like, am I getting sued in Italy? No, okay. He wasn't taking horse steroids. It was I think it was one of those deals, right, where he took a supplement and he was like, well, I didn't know what was in the supplement.
And to be fair, there has people that have had their career derailed for substances like bad tests, like Mamadou Sakho for Liverpool, totally ruined his career, came back. They apologized like 5 years later. Like, oh, shouldn't have been on the ban list.
Yeah. The need to regulate and to police players cheating through chemical means has led to a hammer being used when maybe something smaller and less destructive needed to be deployed. I don't know that that's the case with Paul. I have no idea if that's the case with Pogba. I mean, the guy's had a wild career. I mean, the Juventus United, obviously ends up playing at Juventus again, and he also had the whole blackmail scheme. Witchcraft was involved. I mean, he's French, so of course a lot of this kind of revolves around the French national team and his role there. He's got a bunch of brothers, and they've been involved in stuff. I mean, it is strange, his career, but again, he's talented. And look, it's possible, I suppose. And what's the actual decision is he can train in January, come back and play games in March. He hasn't played in over a year. By the way, just not at all. Played not at all over a year. So he's going to need some time to get back fit and ready to play. When you talk about MLS, this feels like something that might make sense depending on the money that you have to spend to bring him over. And maybe he'd be interested. I mean, I can't imagine that he's got a ton of great options. Who's going to want to have a spot on their roster filled by a guy they don't know what they're going to get out of him? I mean, you unless he chooses to take $0 or some very low amount to play somewhere big, he's kind of going to have to build his career back up. So why not do that in Major League Soccer? Why not come over here and find some team that will give you the opportunity to run their midfield in a growing league?
What teams in MLS do you think that have the infrastructure and the kind of the strength of character to bring in someone like that might bring a lot of drama, for lack of a better term? Like, there's gonna be a
Well,
swirl of notoriety and possible, could go either the really well, really bad. What teams have the infrastructure and the capability to manage something like
yeah,
that?
that's a good question. Do you want to save this one for Hot Topic? Maybe we can bring this up in Hot Topic today. So this is what I would ask. Anybody's watching this show, or drop a comment, below the video and tell us what teams you think might be the kind of team that Paul Pogba could fit with, and I'll lay out my factors when we get to Hot Topic, and maybe we'll do a little bit of a pros and cons on Pogba himself and what he brings to the table when we get to that big question.
All right. Good call. Save that for Hot Topic. Long ball number 3. The MLS leaders continued their winning ways. We'll start off at the top of the table. Inter Miami continue their march towards breaking the all-time points record. What'd you make of that this weekend?
Well, I mean, look, they needed this is what good teams do. They find a way to win, right? They get a late winner from Campana. They get a great ball from Suarez to set him up. You really don't want a center forward able to bring the ball down and settle and find a way to fire that shot the way that it happened for Inter Miami. Yeah, the Toronto disappointment was palpable. But I mean, what's going on with TFC's? What's up with BMO Field's field, their surface? Why does it look like people have been digging for landmines in it or something? Like, what's going on there? I know that's a very visceral image. My apologies, but it just doesn't look good. Anyway, yeah, they found a way to win. That's 2 in a row for them, right after they beat Columbus in that wild game. What's the points record, Robert? You're the informational man. What's the points record? Because you said they still have a possibility of doing it. They have 1 game left. So it's only 74 that they can max out at. Is that level with the Revs?
I believe the Revs 2021 regular season points record was 73, and Inter
73.
Miami sit on 71.
And they play the Revs next. So they could break the record against the team that currently holds a record. There you go. Jenny, thank you very much. This is what I needed to know. The Argonauts play at BMO. I didn't realize that. Should have guessed that. Canadian football, where they do that thing where the wide receivers can run to the line before the snap. It's strange every time I see it, but okay. So that's why the field looks like that. That's not obviously that's not germane to the fact that Inter Miami won that game and found a way to win that game. But yeah, they can beat the record against the Revs in the final on the final match of the season, coming up in 2 weeks. They're not even playing next week. They're playing 2 weeks on October 19th, which I think is decision day, right?
Our conspiracy hat time. MLS script writers put these two, New England and Inter Miami, together intentionally to have the most.
They knew it was coming.
They knew that they would be battling for the Revs record. I bet.
Yeah, maybe. I wonder how much that matters to Tata Martino and Inter Miami. They've already won the Supporters Shield. They got to celebrate with it. I don't think they get to. Nobody's holding it in Miami, at least not that I'm aware of. I heard the Cincinnati supporters drove to Columbus to give the shield to Inter Miami upon their victory against the Crew last week, so they could celebrate with it. But they've already won that trophy. They're going to be the top seed overall in the MLS Cup playoffs, right? Which means that if they win out, we're going to be having an MLS Cup final in Fort Lauderdale. What's the name of that building now? What is that stadium called? It changed names.
It's not Drink Pink anymore?
It's Drink Pink. Is that what I don't think it was ever Drink Pink, Robert. I think it was Drive Pink, maybe? I think it was Drive Pink. It's called Chase Stadium now.
Of course.
Yeah, it's called Chase Stadium. I wonder. I mean, there was some talk. There's been some talk in the past if the NYCFC had managed to finish high up the table and win out and end up with an MLS Cup final in New York, would they really play it at Yankee Stadium? Would they really do that? That was a big question. I guess they would have to do this at Chase Stadium. I don't know how else you could pull it off, find a way to play at the Miami Dolphins joint, I guess. But obviously, they have done something remarkable this year. They've done a lot of it with Lionel Messi, but a lot of it without him as well. They have talent across the team, and yeah, it's a pretty incredible run right now.
Just one more moment before we move along. I gotta just have a moment of appreciation for Tata Martino's ability to coach up his international superstar talent. He did it for Atlanta United. He made some of these career MLS guys household names, and he's doing that again in Miami. With obviously they had a great record when Messi was out of the team. They won just as much, if not more. And then you saw a lot of the big players sat at the weekend, and they took care of business.
Yeah, they didn't even need to roll out all the best, or sorry, their superstar players. The best is maybe a different question. I mean, those guys are clearly talented, but age means that they can't necessarily give you 90 every time out. Although, I mean, maybe we should actually be giving the team MVP for Inter Miami to the medical staff there, because Luis Suarez still hasn't broken down. And we all thought there was no way, especially we go all the way back to the opener when the guy was hobbling around like he was completely broken, and here he is still giving them things and still a major factor. And yeah, I mean, that's maybe the biggest surprise is that yes, Lionel Messi suffered an injury in Copa America that kept him out for a long time, and they missed him, and that was not something necessarily they could do anything about. But for some of these other guys that are on the back end of their career, who probably have no business playing as many games as they have, they've done magical work. Magical work. Hopefully Suarez isn't injecting himself like he used to. He said he used to inject himself when he was in Brazil. So that's not a thing.
Oh dear. Oh dear. If anyone has comments or additional thoughts on today's long balls, hit us up in the chat. But I think we should move right along to today's hot topic. Hot topic of the day here on Monday morning on the Morning Kickaround. Should an MLS team go after Paul Pogba?
Ooh, yeah. We brought this up obviously in long balls there. The idea that an MLS team, and I'll admit that we're talking about this because Pogba being available puts it out there in the ether. But I did see a tweet on X, or a post on X, or an Elon on X, or whatever it's called, from Matt Doyle.
Excretion, I heard.
An excretion, yeah. I mean, remember, this is a pool that Elon has, and it's pretty dirty. Things are defecating in that pool all over the place. But Matt Doyle did not do that. He said, I understand that this is a player who has lots of problems, and he's coming off a long layoff, and there are lots of red flags here when it comes to maybe signing Paul Pogba. But what you can say is the guy is extremely talented, and Matt was imagining him running the show for Atlanta United, who is obviously in a moment of transition. And that got me thinking, okay, let's just go up a level. Should an MLS team even take a crack at Paul Pogba? And then it becomes, okay, which MLS teams might be best suited to give Paul Pogba the platform he needs to thrive again? And those are big questions, Robert.
Yeah, players who have had time off have come to MLS and revived their career. I think the proof of concept for something like this would be Zlatan. Granted, the situation isn't exactly the same, but Zlatan Ibrahimovic was trying to revive himself after a long layoff and a significant injury. He went to the Galaxy, had obviously, big success individually, earned himself a ticket back to European football. But Pogba, I mean, maybe he wants to follow in the steps of his brother Florentine and go to Atlanta United. You think they'd need, a very strong-willed coach that could really manage him, as I'm sure he might have confidence issues just within himself, but also the outside noise has to be managed as well.
I mean, look, you do need the right manager. You need the right structure even above the managerial position. If we talk about the sort of the inception question of whether or not Pogba would be a worthwhile target for an MLS team, my gut says yes. My gut says yes, go for it. Because, look, MLS is a unique place. The spotlight is different Robert. And while I think Paul Pogba is absolutely a famous name within soccer circles, I don't think he crosses over too much here in the U.S. I'm sure Zlatan did at the time, but Zlatan obviously is a force of personality that makes him unique. I'm not sure that that's Pogba. So what you might get is a player who doesn't have to deal with the scrutiny day to day. Now there will be some interest and clearly there'll be some reporters on the story, and who knows what tabloids from England will send over some bloke to cover Pogba playing in America, but it won't be the same. Right? He won't have to deal with walking down the street and having people point at him and say, "Oh, that's Paul Pogba. He got banned for 4 years for doping." Like that's not going to be a thing. There are some cities where the pressure to perform is higher, but let's not pretend that any of it measures up to Turin or to Manchester or anywhere else that Pogba's played before. So I think that might be a good thing for him. I mean, I've argued in the past that MLS should go after a guy like Mario Balotelli. Now, Mario's got his own issues or had his own issues, and
Would it be fun?
I always thought it would be for me. It was like the chaos thing. Like Mario Balotelli is an agent of chaos, and I like that about him. It's fun for me to think about Mario Balotelli in America. Pogba's not quite that guy, even though his life is messy on and off the field. I don't think he's that guy, man. And just think about what he did for France in 2018, and how good he's been at moments in his career for club and country. And if he can even get back to three-quarters of that in Major League Soccer, I mean, we're talking about Ricky Puig with more athleticism, more size, more strength, more everything. And I'm not Ricky Puig has been a massive hit in Los Angeles. So if you can get Pogba in and have him fill that kind of role, it could be pretty magical.
Do you think Pogba would be the type of player that would require to be at one of like the hotspot cities in America? Would he have to be in a New York, an LA, or a Miami to consider it, you think?
Good question. Obviously, European players are attracted to the big name cities, the marquee towns. Offense to Columbus and I guess
Nashville.
Denver's. I love Denver, but Denver's probably on the list. Nashville's on the list. I mean, let's be Austin, who now needs a coach. I probably would end up. I mean, I would take a run at him regardless if I was a general manager and I had cap space. I mean, there is a question of whether or not he would have to be a DP at this point. He hasn't played in a year. He's been banned. He has damaged goods. Are you getting him at a discount? If you can get him at a massive discount, then it's absolutely worth at least kicking the tires on it. I mean, there's no reason not to reach out. If you're now, we know MLS. Is he on a discovery list somewhere? Who's got the rights to Paul Pogba? It's stupid MLS stuff. But I think you could probably negotiate that. I wonder, Montreal. Montreal did, they brought in a big name French speaking player in the past in Didier Drogba. Maybe Paul Pogba in Montreal makes some sense. But I do think that you asked a good question. What team has the structure? What team has the adults in the room? I want to say to handle this. I don't think that's Montreal. I could see it in Atlanta, even though Atlanta's going through this transition, and even though they're looking for a head coach and they've got lots of questions in front of them. I would say Garth Lagerwey is almost a perfect manager for a guy like or a general manager rather for a guy like Paul Pogba. And I know that's not his role; he's the president in Atlanta, but I could see that work. I could see that working out. Now, the thing about Garth Lagerwey though is he's never really gone out and spent big money on a big name player. I mean, that's not really been his history, Seattle or Atlanta so far. I mean, they spent some money, they spent some money on the guy who loves hip hop. My mind blanking on his name. They signed a player who they spent a bunch of money on. It was a lot of money for Atlanta United, certainly, or a lot of money for an MLS team. This is not the same. Again, you're probably not spending. He's a free agent. You're not going to spend money on a transfer fee. What his salary will be is an open question, but I think it's more about his notoriety, as you said, Robert. So if is it LA, New York, are those teams, any of those teams in those two cities ready for the Paul Pogba show? Are they going to get the most out of him? Then there's the question about a place like Atlanta. Could he be attracted to that based on maybe what his brothers told him? Certainly they play in front of big crowds when they're good. There is something to be said for that. Outside of that, man, everything else is kind of like real dicey. Chicago, I mean, I'm always going to pitch Chicago as a place that big name players should go to, but they've whiffed on two of, or they whiffed recently on one of those. So I don't know. It is. I want an MLS team to go after Paul Pogba, but I can't tell you that it's a perfect fit.
One team that kind of comes to mind as we're playing with the idea of Paul Pogba coming to Major League Soccer is he's got two French teammates on an MLS team already. LAFC, he could join the likes of Olivier Giroud
Yeah. Yeah.
and the
Hugo
goalkeeper,
Lloris.
Hugo
Yeah.
Lloris.
Well, that's only if they don't get Antoine Griezmann maybe next summer, which I think is a possibility. Griezmann, still playing very well at Atleti, but retired it from international soccer. So, maybe there's something to that. I mean, if you're going to ask me, who do you want, Antoine Griezmann or Paul Pogba? I'm taking Griezmann. I'm not
Oh,
taking
yeah.
Pogba first. So,
Far less of
I,
a gamble and is
yeah.
still
So,
consistently performing. Yeah.
so if LAFC is going to go after one big name French player, then they're going to go after Griezmann. Maybe the Galaxy have space, and then we get Pogba on one side of town and Griezmann on the other, and make it a thing. I mean, for the show of it all, I would be into that for sure.
It would become Le Trafico.
Le trafic. I mean, la trafic. Something like that. Somebody can tell me what the word for traffic in French is. It's probably not that. I probably butchered it.
With the gamble that it would be to bring Pogba in, our MLS clubs have the flexibility to maybe backload it, like, give him a low base salary, and then if it works out, reward him on achievement.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, incentive laden contracts. I mean, I don't know that there are incentive laden contracts in MLS on some level. I guess it's possible. I mean, yeah, like you said. I mean, there have been guys who have come to MLS, and their initial salary is a lot, but not crazy amounts of money, and then things are backloaded where they get a lot more money later on. Now, you take a risk as a club when you sign a contract like that, because if you don't get the value from the player, then you're stuck with the contract, or you've got to find some way to get out of the contract if and when he doesn't deliver. Sometimes the player and the team say, this isn't working out. Let's just cut ties. No money needs to change hands after this. But, remember, Pogba's sat around and not played for a while. So if he signs a big contract and it just doesn't work out, is he going to really say, okay, yeah, I'm not going to take that money. I'm going to go back into the waters of Europe and look for a club that might take me? I mean, the thing about this with Pogba is there are so many distinct possibilities about where this could go. Now, I don't imagine my one of those doesn't feel like the possibility of him being a big time player for a Champions League winning level kind of team, right? We're not talking about, he's not going to be a central player in an elite club again. At least I don't see that. At 31 years old off this break, I don't see that. But could he find a nice soft place to land in Europe, in France? Sure. Could he, could he end up in MLS making a bunch of money and starring for a team in midfield? Absolutely, he could do that. Could I see a Mexican club giving him a flyer of a contract and maybe bringing him in? Yeah, sure. All those things are possible for a guy like Pogba.
I had a friend suggest maybe he could join Andy Carroll at Bordeaux in the fourth league in France and,
Wow.
help their reclamation project.
Did not know Andy Carroll was doing anything right now. Andy Carroll's doing what now? What is Andy Carroll doing?
So Bordeaux, they had some sort of financial collapse and they got moved down to the bottom league in France.
Okay.
And as a act of adventure, I suppose Andy Carroll has been traveling each week from his home in England to play for Bordeaux to help them move back.
Wow, that's interesting.
French leagues.
That's interesting. Okay. I mean, maybe Paul Pogba gets involved in a Como-like project, right? They're in Serie A now after Cesc Fabregas and some new investment helped them. Yeah, sure. Why not? He probably has enough money that if he wanted to go buy into a lower division team at this point, he absolutely could do that. And maybe it's a Wrexham, maybe it's a Como, maybe it's a Bordeaux, maybe it's something like that. That would be certainly fascinating from a storyline perspective. Now, again, selfishly, I want him to come play in America because I'd like to see, and if we can get Paul Pogba back to 3/4 of what he used to be, that would be fun to watch in MLS.
Nate in the chat had an interesting suggestion. I think this would be a real test of character for a new team and the player himself. San Diego, Pogba plus beach equals money, says Nate.
Yeah, well, look, you mentioned the managerial thing. And I do think it's important to have a manager that players like Pogba can respect. there are different levels of professionalism among players. Some players don't care. They're just going to come in. They're going to do what the boss says. Whatever the gaffer says, that's my job. There are other players who will probably have a look down their nose kind of approach, depending on who is telling them what to do. I'm not sure Mikey Veras, in his very first job as a head coach anywhere at the club level, makes sense as a guy that's supposed to wrangle Paul Pogba into shape. It just doesn't seem like a good fit to me. But maybe I'm underselling Mikey Veras, and maybe I'm misjudging Paul Pogba.
I mean, it's an exciting prospect to have a big name as kind of like a banner name for your club debut, but it seems like, if things don't go well at any point, it could really snowball there. I
Yes,
mean,
right.
like you said, Pogba's starting to, get back in the swing of things, feeling good, doesn't agree with the decisions of the manager. You feel like him and his entourage, at least in the past, he has had a significant entourage.
Yes.
Don't know if he's changed those sort of patterns, but you think that you'd have a lot of voices saying, this guy doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah, that's the thing. He is going to be, regardless of what his crossover appeal is in America, he will be a big fish in a small pond. That is absolutely a fact, and you do have to deal with that if you're whatever club decides to go after Pogba, if you want to bring him in. And if we went down this 29 MLS teams, soon to be 30 with San Diego, obviously, we went down the list, we can eliminate many, many, many of them just on the fact that it just wouldn't work out from that perspective. And like you said, is Paul Pogba going to willingly play in Kansas City? Probably not. In Salt Lake City? Probably not. I've already mentioned Denver, and I love Denver, but no, probably not. Portland? Probably not. Maybe Toronto, but that's not where Toronto's program is right now. So, and they've already got the big name players that they're trying to figure out how to wrestle into something coherent and cogent. So I don't know. It's a wild one.
Yeah, Toronto definitely has their overpaid, underperforming stars already locked in so far. Just kind of a final note on this is, do you think that, what could you compare? Like, I keep on coming back to like Michael Vick, someone who we thought would never come back.
Yeah.
Coming back. Do you think there's a parallel of someone in soccer who's had this kind of a layoff and kind of out of nowhere been given a lifeline and succeeded with it?
In soccer, man, this long of a layoff, that I don't know. I can't think of a player who's had a ban. I mean, obviously Maradona had a ban. That would, but his career, you can't compare Maradona to anybody, not just because of the talent, just because of how crazy his life was. I mean, even Pogba can't really, and Pogba again got blackmailed by family, and somehow still his life is less crazy than Diego Maradona's. I can't think of any. Certainly in modern football, I can't think of anybody who's been gone for a while. Everybody kind of gave up on him, and he's now supposed to come back and figure out a way back. And look, let's just say this as a matter of covering all of our bases. Paul Pogba can train in January. He's negotiating a deal to get out of his contract with Juve. I'm sure they don't want to pay him anymore. He can go play somewhere. He can start playing again in March. He's 31. There's no guarantee, depending on what options are on the table for him, that he's going to definitely come back and play. I mean, I think he probably will, but I don't know where that is yet. And until we kind of know what's out there in the marketplace for him, he may just say, okay, that's enough. I'm going to hang it up. And I'll go again. I'll invest in a Como or something.
All right, guys, let us know in the chat. Do you think that Paul Pogba, if he comes back, will be a force to be reckoned with again?
What MLS team should go after Paul Pogba, if any? Tell us right now. Tell us in the chat. Do that.
All right, we're going to catch our breath and come back with the big question. As the leagues around the world come screeching to a halt once again, the international break is here. So on this Monday morning, with no club football to look forward to, I banks and see, and Arsene Wenger brought up a proposal to limit international windows to just one or two a season, with the second international break in the very young European season. Should international calendar be remedied, Mr. Jason Davis?
Is that how we're looking at this? Remedied. That's how we're going to say this? Okay, I'm actually
Reconstructed.
all right. I got it. This is so everybody can see it here on the live show, so you can read it. This is what Arsene Wenger proposed for international soccer. This is from 2021, so it's been 3 years since Wenger proposed this. And obviously, in the international window, as you said, Robert, we're trying to figure out, do we need to change things? A biennial World Cup. Okay, well, come on. Let's just a biennial World Cup, Arsene. What are you nuts? What are you crazy?
That is not part of the proposal that I am interested in.
Okay. Confederation tournaments, including the European Championship, in odd years. So this is he's saying a World Cup every 2 years, a Confederation tournament like the European Championship, Gold Cup, Copa America, Asian Championship in odd years. I guess he means every 2 years for those as well. Again, that's not what we're interested in, right? So this is the big one that you're kind of bringing to the table. Either one, October, or two, October and March mid-season international breaks for a month in total when qualifying for major tournaments will take place. Groups of 4 countries are envisaged with a playoff for a maximum of 7 matches. And then guaranteed rest period for players once tournaments are over. Now, I will say that last one, Robert,
huge.
I mean, we'll come back to the windows, but the last one is right now in this moment. Rodri's broken. Players are upset and complaining. We're talking about strikes and stuff. I mean, nobody feels like we're about to tip over yet because I think it's kind of like one of those deals where you don't really think it's going to happen until it does. Like you don't think your car's going to break down until it actually does break down. Then you got to deal with the ramifications of it breaking down. I think that breaks for players are absolutely necessary, but in order to get there under Wenger's plan, you have to do the different windows. And we are doing. How many windows do we have this year? We got a window now. We had a window in September. We're probably going to have another window in
January.
In January, right? Yeah. Well, there's
at least the U.S. is.
The U.S. has a camp in January. There's not. I don't know that there's an international window in January. But so, there are too many, right? Is what people constantly complain that there are too many international breaks, and this is Wenger's way to try to fix that. But would this be better in your mind?
I do really like the consolidation of the international breaks. When this article or when this proposal came out, there was 5 international breaks during the club season. And I think that it does both a disservice, both the club game and the international game. So we're 2 months into the season, and this is already the second break.
Oh, there's another one in November, by the way. There's another one coming up next month.
Goodness gracious. I
mean, so we go October, November, March, June, which is going to be after most of the domestic campaigns are over. I'm looking. This is 2024 into 2025. Then obviously we have the summer, so you have the Gold Cup next year. Then again, September, October, November, and then March again. So that's 4, right? We're talking about 4 during the season proper. And Wenger's saying, no, do it either in one, meaning October, take all of October off and do qualifying, or do 2 weeks in October and 2 weeks in March.
I think the doing all in one break in the season, like taking the whole month of October or March off to do that, I think those teams the international teams would have more time together in order to establish a quality team play. And it would also allow the rest of the world in the club sphere to get on a run and galvanize their own teams. And part of some of the quotes from Wenger at the time, the current schedule offered no clarity, no simplicity, or no modern way to organize a season. I think if we go on like this, we will hit the wall. And we might be getting near to that wall now, Jason.
Yeah, I mean, you take these players. Now, not every player has the same experience, right? And there are obviously plenty of players who don't get called up to their national team at all. But the top level players, right? The ones who right now are speaking out about the number of games they're being asked to play in a year, those are the ones that we have to be concerned with. If you want to maintain the quality at the top end of the game, well, you can't keep running these players into the ground the way that you are. So you're saying, hey, obviously for some of those European-based players, oh, you're in the Premier League, oh, you just hop over the channel and you're in Europe, and then boom, you're playing international. It's not a big deal. But there are lots of players who go from England to Brazil, or Italy to Brazil, or Spain to South America, Argentina, the United States, CONCACAF players going back and forth. And that's going to be killer. I mean, that travel adds to the level of fatigue and the wear and tear on the body, in addition to all the games they're being asked to play. So, we talk about travel in Major League Soccer because it's such a factor with the vast distances that teams are spread apart in our country. Most countries don't have to deal with it. Certainly European countries don't have to deal with that. But it doesn't seem like their travel is being brought into the equation quite as much as it maybe should when we talk about the wear and tear on players. And again, it's not just it's not just the travel; it's how often you're traveling, right? We're talking about 4 windows. Where you leave your club, you go to your team, you train. Maybe you fly to a different country for a game. You're flying back. You're flying, and we've even heard stories. I think it was one of the Spurs internationals who said something like, "They did not even work out how I was supposed to get back."
I think it's
to
Romero.
England. Yeah, it was Romero, right? He said there was no like consideration for me to try to get back and be ready to play again. And again, is that on the international program? Who's, generally speaking, we know, corruption and a lot of graft and a lot of money being, and even just then budgets, even if it's not about graft and corruption, it's about budgets being smaller. Then the clubs are saying, we resent every single international window and every single international club. We don't want our guys we're paying millions of pounds to go off to play in a game where they might get kicked in the knee by a third division player from Bolivia or whatever. Right. And everybody is at odds with all of this. And now, again, we add to this because there's this race for more games. There's a race for more revenue. We have UEFA, who controls the top level of the club game. So FIFA saying, wait a second, we want a piece of that. Now we got the Club World Cup, which you and I have talked about, Robert, which seems ridiculous. We got all these teams coming into the United States. The games are going to come fast and furious. We don't know how seriously they're going to take any of it. But you're asking players to do more travel, play more games. They are not robots, and it feels as though this whole thing treats them as such. And while I think Arsene Wenger has some pretty insane ideas, number one being a World Cup every 2 years, there certainly is something to be said for the way that he wants to eliminate some of the wear and tear on the players. Because international football is great. We don't want it to go anywhere. But we can't keep doing it the way we are and expect it to stay the same and feel the same and still deliver the way it always has.
We shouldn't forget, with all the ideas we don't agree with Arsene Wenger, it is good to remember that part of what made him so great was he kind of revolutionized the approach to player health, diet, and the way the players take care of themselves. And that was a big reason why he was able to elevate that Arsenal team at the beginning of his coaching tenure there.
Yeah.
And so he puts in this quote back when he proposed all this, is it's absolute detrimental to the players, the repeated travel and jet lag without reducing the qualifying period. I believe that clubs will benefit and the players will benefit from the reduced load. And just to put it in real world terms, the only match that Liverpool lost this season, the league leaders in the Premier League, was the game straight after the first international break. And if I was a betting man, I'm not a betting man. If I was to bet on any upsets of the top clubs in international football, I would bet on that first game after an international break.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It just makes sense that these players are gassed from their travel. We demand, and this is certainly true of American soccer fans with our U.S. men's national team. It's been a major talking point over the last 2 years with the whole Berhalter saga and the player pool and everything else. We demand maximum effort and commitment from our international players, from our national teamers, every single time they pull on the shirt. Every time they wear the badge, they have to go and bleed for their country. And if they don't, well, we don't want them representing our country. So you're saying, hey, go give maximum. It's a friendly against the Turks and Caicos, but you better lay it all on the line or we don't want you, right? But that only forces the players then into a situation where they're playing for their livelihood. They're playing for the club team. And by the way, the fans of the club teams are no less demanding, right? Everybody is demanding the most they can possibly give, and if you show any sign of slacking, well, you're out. I mean, that puts impossible demands on these players. And I don't know that anybody's really considering Wenger's proposal right now. But as we continue to hear players talk about the load that they're under, and maybe the clubs also need to be cognizant of this and find ways. I mean, you and I have talked about, is the elimination of the League Cup coming at some point? That's just one country, though. But is the elimination of the League Cup coming? Because that's just too much. You can't throw these teams continually into the grinder and ask them to come out playing good soccer. It's an open question. I'm open to it. I have to think about what a whole month off from club football looks like, and teams flying around to play qualifiers, and again organizing that, because Wenger is proposing 4 groups and all these 7 matches total. Think about the number of matches that CONMEBOL nations play to qualify for a World Cup, right? There are 10 countries in CONMEBOL. You play everybody twice. That's 18 matches over a 3.5-year span to qualify for a World Cup. That is tradition. That is baked into the identity of South American football. If you say, well, you only got a month to do qualifying now, or we're doing a month every year, you can only play a certain number of games, that's going to put a different kind of pressure on everybody involved.
Well, just like any change to an established pattern or calendar or entity, there's always going to be unintended consequences, right? Like, while maybe if this plan goes into effect, I'm sure there would be some sort of a con that you don't get to, that you wouldn't think of ahead of time. Just coming to think of it, South America probably produces the most variables with the amount of games and all that. Plus, that South American fans probably would be upset that they don't get to see their Brazilian stars, their Argentina stars for 9 months at a time.
All of those things are at play. Just, we don't do change very well, right? Like, I mean, people think of sports in terms of tradition, and when you start messing with that idea of tradition, people get very, very upset about it. And I think it's been true, even in America, even with Major League Soccer, which doesn't have the deepest history. You throw the League's Cup pause into the mix and people freak out. Obviously the way that MLS has treated the U.S. Open Cup, which we talked about, bucks against tradition. They'll come up with some rationalization for why they're doing it, and we can see through that on some level. But for them, if they say, well, it's because there are too many games and we need to stop doing it, but we scream about the denial of the tradition of that tournament, and this is going to be true for anything that gets changed. And this is why it's tough for a guy like Wenger, who's been, again, maybe a little kooky, maybe, but also been asked by FIFA to figure out a way to handle some, to make things better that might be a problem. And whether or not there's any will to actually make those changes, we shall see.
All that said, I'm excited to see USA play 2 games this weekend coming up in Mauricio Pochettino's first effort leading the U.S. men's national team. If you want to get a hold of us at Kickaround on the X and the Instagram, and if you want to write us a note, questions, comments, concerns, or partnership opportunities, Morning Kickaround at Gmail.
Gmail. Was it Gmail?
Gmail.
But that's a G. It's not, isn't it Gmail? Not Gmail? Is it a soft G? How do G's work? Robert, explain that to me.
In the digital world, it's free to express yourself how you
Is it
want
a GIF or a GIF? Are we doing that? Are we still doing that? Okay. Also, like and subscribe the show. Like the video, subscribe to the show. I see we've just ticked up to 160, and it's still early days for us. So we're gonna celebrate that like we've done something big. 160 subscribers. But this is the most important thing. Tell somebody. Tell somebody about Morning Kickaround. Tell somebody that we're here, that we're doing it every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Get involved. Also, be part of the show with comments and interaction and those kind of things. What else, Robert?
Yeah, we've been averaging about 10 new subscribers per show. We're going to keep that up, and at that rate, we will be at 50,000 at the turn of the new year.
Don't check the math. Don't check the math on that. Don't check the math at all. Yeah, we're gonna get there. We promise. Somehow, tell everybody. If you this is on everybody watching, everybody who finds us, everybody who's already subscribed. If you tell somebody and they tell somebody else and they tell somebody else, I know this is like very cliche, old school word of mouth marketing kind of concepts, but they work. They work.
You hear the show, you talk to other people about the show. And it looks like we do have a couple extra minutes, so we'll do an extra time moment. The third division of United States soccer is having a little bit of controversy of their own. The league that seems to provide plenty of head scratchers, National Independent Soccer Association, their season has reached the playoffs, but the team who was the number one team throughout the regular season has been left out. So Saturday, October 12th, Irvine Zeta will take on the Michigan Stars and then play LA Force in the final, despite the Maryland Bobcats being the number one team in the league.
Robert, I was gonna grab my Maryland Bobcats jersey, the glitch kit that I have in my house, but it seems to be in the laundry, so I can't show it off. But they have the Maryland Bobcats, among other things, have done really well with jerseys and the like. Nisa, man, I don't even know. It feels like you have to be a particular kind of soccer fan to want to wade into those Nisa waters. Like you have to want the messiness of it all to engage with Nisa. I am certainly aware of some of the origins, the original intent of Nisa. Over the years on the United States of Soccer, we would occasionally talk to people involved with Nisa after things changed a bit. And we never failed to take an opportunity to name check Peter Wilt on this show. But Peter Wilt moved on, wasn't part of Nisa as they launched. That the league, the concept, right? What is the concept, Robert? Basically, you can, as long as you have a little bit of money to scratch together to pull together, you can join up. It's open, all of those things. Those additional parts, like why Maryland Bobcats are ineligible. Do I want to know? Do we know? Is there something? I mean, I'm sure some people are covering this.
So hardworking folks at Protagonist, they had an article. I'm not sure how many sources, but at least one source from Maryland contributed that there was some sort of an agreement that Maryland was short on money, and there was some sort of a verbal agreement that the league would help them out with paying their league fees and whatnot. And then now that they are going into the playoffs, they've then rescinded that. And it's intimated that the league wanted Maryland assurance that they'd return for another season. And so kind of the way the story on Protagonist paints the story is we will, you can't be in the playoffs if you have unpaid league fees, but we'll pay your league fees if you stay again for another season.
Right.
The way the article writes it.
I see. So, yeah, I mean, again, I don't know enough about how either side views this. This is not the first time Nisa has had issues with a club who either wasn't paying its fees or where there was some shadiness around some of the way that money was being utilized to various clubs. Obviously, again, the idea of Nisa is open. Independent is in the name. That's the whole idea. You should be able to buy in regardless of who you are or where you are. But that does create sort of naturally a very shaky foundation. And if the league's going to have any administrative power at all, well, then you got to pay into the league office to be able to run the league. That's sort of a necessary evil. You can be independent, but you still need a league office. So if indeed this is a situation where Maryland wasn't paying their fees that were due, yeah, I can understand the league office's position. But at the same time, again, maybe because there have been issues and because this is also very much connected, Robert, to the soccer wars, Wild West idea of how lower division soccer works in the United States, right? And if Nisa is competing on some level with USL in terms of League One, which is also a third division league sanctioned by U.S. Soccer, if they're competing with these other organizations that are professional soccer leagues, then Maryland may say, well, this is not working for us, or we're thinking bigger than what Nisa can provide. They're eyeing a move to League One. Maybe they've already had discussions with, this is all speculative on my part, already had discussions with USL, or there's something at play there. And then they withhold their league fees because they don't want to give that money to Nisa if they're going to be skipping out next season. And in the moment, As the playoffs arrive, those discussions come to a head. And then because NISA, I don't know, feels aggrieved by this, rather than run the league in a competitive and a fair manner in terms of what happened on the field, they pull Maryland's accreditation in the league before the playoff. It's all very messy, very ugly, and very American soccer.
Very American soccer indeed. Put that, file that under the American soccer is a weird category.
It's weird.
Jason.
It is weird. American soccer is super weird. One day we're going to have a whole segment just on American soccer being weird. Tell us your American soccer stories that are weird, and we'll write them down and we'll get to them, I promise.
Yeah, thank you to everyone who contributed in the chat. Hit us up with those American stories of weirdness. Morning Kickaround at gmail.com.
That's how you say that.
As well as mkickaround on X and Instagram. And until Wednesday, everybody, please enjoy your soccer. Like and subscribe too.